Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan Taylor. I'm the CEO of Dash Core Group, and I'm here to present some information from a regulatory and compliance standpoint about Dash, a cryptocurrency. Many of you viewing this may be members of the community, and the purpose of this video is not only to arm the community of Dash users with this information, but also to reach out outside of the Dash community to regulators, compliance officers, and other operators of money services businesses to better inform them about how the Dash network works, about compliance needs and how Dash can meet those. And so we do contain some information here that's pretty basic about Dash and its functionality that is probably familiar to many of you watching this video, but we include them to make this video more accessible to those who might be less familiar with Dash. And so with that purpose in mind, we want to spend the next hour or so walking you through this presentation and getting you familiar with Dash's, in particular, privacy status and how exchanges and other money services businesses can easily comply with regulation while servicing Dash users. So first, a summary of what we'll be covering today. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Dash network and Dash Core Group. We're talking about both of those to draw a distinction between the two and explain some of the basics about the network. We're going to be talking about the uses of Dash. This is important because many regulators are concerned with the extent to which illicit activities may be happening on a network, and therefore the level of risk that that network poses. The third major category of topics that we'll talk about are regulatory compliance, how cryptocurrency exchanges can list Dash and still comply with their regulatory obligations. We'll draw a comparison with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies to help orient where on the privacy spectrum Dash properly belongs. And we'll talk a little bit about statistics and analysis that have been done from independent third parties. Next, we'll talk about the privacy feature specifically called Private Send, which is a branded implementation of CoinJoin. And we'll actually walk through an example of how Private Send works and really illustrate why there is no basis for the label of privacy coin or categorization of privacy coin for regulatory purposes. And we'll also walk through some of the opinions from third parties. And I think the goal by the end of this presentation is to help illustrate why Dash is frequently miscategorized as a privacy coin and what the true facts would support. So first, an introduction about Dash. Dash is a leading cryptocurrency network focused on payments, excluding stable coins and DeFi protocols. Dash is currently the 8th largest cryptocurrency in the market, according to Messari. And the Dash network was launched quite a long time ago in January 2014. It's one of the very older projects within the space. And today it's very established and well-recognized project. The Dash network is a user-operated network, similar to Bitcoin. In fact, Dash is forked from Bitcoin's code base. Its use case is as currency for everyday transactions. The payments are distinct from other networks in that they are nearly instant, less than 2 seconds confirmation time. They're easy to use, very secure, and with near zero fees. And it's really built and optimized to support real-life use cases, such as point-of-sale transactions or transactions where speed is of utmost importance. And so users can actually purchase goods at thousands of merchants. It's integrated to well over, I think at this point, 1,700 ATMs globally, and it's traded at major exchanges and brokers around the globe, making it useful for things like remittances or actually for traders that are making markets around the globe. Dash's network, just like Bitcoin's, features a transparent and auditable blockchain. It doesn't have any hidden addresses or any hidden transaction details. All transactions list the complete set of inputs, outputs, addresses, and amounts involved in every single transaction. Now, shifting our attention to Dash Core Group, one of the questions we get from regulators oftentimes is, well, are you a money services business? And the answer is no. Dash Core Group is distinct from the Dash network. I represent Dash Core Group as its CEO, and we're one of many entities that serve the Dash network. Dash Core Group was incorporated as a Delaware C Corp in July 2017, well after the founding of the currency and the network. We're the largest software development organization for the network at this time. And we do engage in other activities such as business development and marketing, as well as regulatory issues like we are here. And there are other software development teams that are associated with the project, including 2 other teams that support both mobile and desktop wallets. Other teams focus on business development, marketing, or other activities that are relevant to the network. And so Dash Core Group, you can think of as a subcontractor to the network. We don't actually operate the network in any way. We publish open source code similar to the Bitcoin Core team. And that code is adopted by the network or not adopted by the network. Dash Core Group receives funding from the network on a monthly basis. This is one of the other aspects that makes Dash unique, is that the network can actually allocate freshly minted coins from the underlying protocol to projects that request them, subject to the network approving of those requests. Dash has a block reward similar to Bitcoin, but instead of allocating 100% of that block reward towards miners as a payment for their services, Dash allocates their block reward differently. 45% goes towards miners, 45% towards masternodes, and 10% towards a proposal system. These numbers are beginning to change. The protocol allows for them to change, and these percentages are currently approximate. At some point in the future, approximately 55% will be going towards masternodes and 35% towards miners. But at the present time, these numbers are approximate. Dash Core Group obtains its funding from that 10% that's allocated towards the proposal system through proposals that we submit to the network. These grants are not automated. They're not automatic. They require network participants to vote for our proposals in order to receive those funds on the exact same terms as other projects. So Dash Core Group, as I said, provides the open source software development services to the Dash community. Specifically, we focus on the protocol itself and wallets that connect to the protocol. We don't operate the network in any way, similar to how Bitcoin Core developers don't operate the Bitcoin network. We don't engage in the business of accepting and transmitting of Dash on behalf of any users, and we don't buy cryptocurrency from or sell cryptocurrency to users. Those wishing to acquire Dash generally do so via exchange or broker by trading with other users of those platforms. On this slide, I'd like to walk you through some of the background of select members of our executive team. These are not the only members of our executive team, but it'll give you a flavor of the professionalism that we have here at Dash Core Group. My own background, I have about 2 decades of fintech and payments experience. I most recently worked for a Wall Street firm with $20 billion assets under management, where I was an analyst focused on the fintech and payments industries. Prior to that, I was an associate partner with McKinsey & Company, where I was focused on fintech and financial services industries. Prior to that, I obtained an MBA from Columbia Business School. And I won't walk through everyone's background here. You can always freeze the video and read through them, but we do have a highly professional team that appreciates and understands the regulatory issues that exchanges face in accepting cryptocurrency. So let's get into a little bit about the network and the technology behind Dash. Our goal is to provide greater financial freedom. Our mission is to make payments quick, easy, secure, and inexpensive. And due to our instant send feature, payments settle almost instantly. And that gives us a distinct advantage in this particular industry when it comes to providing for use cases, particularly time-sensitive transactions. And unlike credit cards, the recipient or the merchant can actually utilize those incoming funds instantly. That's a distinct advantage over credit cards and other digital payment types. So we're targeting users, merchants, and developers. We'll get more into how we're targeting developers in a moment, with solutions that meet their needs. Some of the issues that cryptocurrency and Dash in particular solve is that traditional payments have really high fraud rates, fake chargebacks, theft, and so on. And most services cost quite a lot to accept. They take a long time to settle, up to 3 business days for credit cards. There's risk of exposing data that can be stolen from merchants, such as credit card numbers and other sensitive data. That isn't the case with cryptocurrency payments. Fiat money is susceptible to high inflation. This certainly doesn't affect us as much in developed countries, but in the developing world, this is a real issue. And most cryptocurrencies, frankly, have a poor user experience, and Dash aims to solve many of those. Our features are that it's easy to use, it's instant, it's very inexpensive, less than a penny to send a transaction. It's secure. Transactions are secured within seconds of being sent, and it's borderless. It takes out the middleman when conducting business cross-border. So, the high fees that are associated with Western Union and other remittance companies, it gives us a distinct advantage, and it's one of the use cases that a lot of people do use cryptocurrency for. And lastly, it provides for optional privacy. This is really important for user safety. There are instances of individuals being targeted for kidnapping, for theft, because it is transparent that they have a certain balance. And so we believe that a certain level of privacy is absolutely essential to provide as part of these cash-like products. And lastly, how? Well, we're doing that obviously with the network itself and the currency that runs on it, but also we're enhancing Dash with a developer platform that we'll talk more about, and applications that can easily be deployed to the network. And frankly, a better user experience, and we'll get into some of the reasons why in a moment. And so Dash is competing in a way that is aiming for the casual user, the less sophisticated user, the mainstream user that is necessary if we're going to break into the mainstream. Dash Core Group plays a role in all of this, a very important set of roles. We're doing several things. First, we're building the ecosystem. We'll talk about some of those use cases, but really building that brand and community and the partnerships necessary to target some of these areas that we feel have the greatest need and the greatest fit for cryptocurrency, solving payment problems in those areas. We also focus a lot on the product to make it easy to use and reliable. We'll talk about some of the advantages there. And in particular, again, it's being instant and cheap that really differentiate Dash transactions versus our competitors. And lastly, the technology. A lot of these protocols focus a lot on layer one, which is simply the payments layer. We're adding a data layer and message storage capability that allows for a third layer to be built on top of it, which is applications that access that layer 2 data. These three things taken together provide a much richer user experience, and we'll demonstrate one of those in a video a bit later in the presentation. It's not just providing a better user experience, though. It's also about extending the capabilities so that developers can access the network in an easier to use fashion, particularly with legacy infrastructure or applications that they build for the network. And it's also about scaling the performance. All of this does little good if the network can only handle a few 100,000 transactions a day. And so we've invested in scaling technologies and ways that we can ensure that the infrastructure of the network is able to keep up with the number of users. And we do that in part by paying the network operators to operate the network through participation in that block subsidy that we talked about earlier. With Bitcoin and other networks, those nodes or servers are not paid for their services to the network. They do it from an altruistic standpoint. They operate these nodes on the network voluntarily. And so they just don't scale well when the hardware requirements start to increase. And so we've addressed all of these things in kind of a very comprehensive way in which we're targeting markets, we're providing the user experience that's needed, and we're building the technology needed to provide that user experience. As I've illustrated on the last couple of slides, our real competitive advantage is speed. This is the thing that differentiates Dash the most on the market. And so there's a number of use cases that have been particularly good towards Dash. The first is exchanges. Dash has been incorporated in some of the most well-respected exchanges in the industry, including Coinbase, Kraken, Binance, and Uphold, among others. And oftentimes, Dash is the fastest deposit method available on an exchange. And that is because of our instant send technology. This provides a real advantage for traders and why Dash is increasingly used for trading purposes. We've seen our trading volume continue to increase on these exchanges. If you can move value very quickly between exchanges, you can take advantage of arbitrage opportunities when prices become dislodged from one another. And you can rebalance the value that you have on various exchanges as a trader very quickly with Dash. And those provide operational benefits to traders. And so Dash is simply a very efficient tool for traders looking to make markets and take advantage of market opportunities. Second, Dash is really well positioned for point of sale purchases. We just announced recently that Dash will soon be accepted at around 156,000 merchant locations through a payment partner called CrayPay. Because Dash transactions are instant, there's no risk to CrayPay of submitting a payment to those merchants without any risk of a chargeback. And so it really enables a use case that no other cryptocurrency can, which is purchases at the point of sale at a massive number of locations. In Latin America, Dash has been adopted by merchants at the point of sale. A couple of examples that you see on the page here is Burger King and Church's Chicken. But there are others like large department store chains like Traki, grocery store chains like Excelsior Gamma. And so Dash is a payment method directly at some of these merchants and is gaining traction in that market. We've also targeted gaming. And when I say gaming, I'm not referring to gambling. I'm talking about esports. Dash has partnered with ReadyRaider as one example here. This is an esports gaming platform where users can leverage their Dash to transact with one another, to share in spoils of common games where a team works together to accomplish a goal and then collects a set of loot as a result. And they need a mechanism to be able to split that up and settle among themselves. Dash is integrated into that platform. They also have tournaments and other engagement with their community. And Dash is exclusive to that platform, in part because of its speed. Once again, gamers do not want to have to wait to be able to utilize their purchases and wait for settlement. And Dash is integrated into a lot of gift platforms where you can actually shop at a discount. Some of the examples are here at the bottom of the page. And so Dash is really aiming for a mainstream use case. The question we get from regulators oftentimes is, how is it used? What are some legitimate purposes for it? Because I think there's an assumption that oftentimes these tools are used for illicit purposes, and that's simply not the case. That doesn't square with reality of how our users are using Dash. As I said, we focused on mainstream adoption, and part of reaching a mainstream user is creating ease of use. One of the biggest barriers to adoption is the scariness that comes with long cryptographic addresses and the difficulty of using cryptocurrency versus other payment platforms. So what we have here is a short video that illustrates how we're building applications that take advantage of this data layer that we've talked about. So the first application that we're launching is called Dash Pay, and it's actually on our testnet now and should launch to our mainnet in the near future. And this demo walks you through the creation of a username. It should be very similar to the experience that most users have when using a service like Venmo. All you need is a little bit of Dash to get started, or an invitation from another user that has paid for that username application on your behalf. And it's not a high cost. It's a relatively modest fee, like on the order of a couple of pennies. And basically, you apply for your username through a process directly in the application. And so what that allows you to do is make payments to other users in a fashion that is very familiar and relevant to most users, which is, paying a name or a family member without having to stare at these cryptographic addresses. And what you're seeing here is just few intro screens that will walk the user through the benefits and explain what they are. You are allowed to personalize your username and profile information. That can be useful for making a payment to a merchant, for example. You wouldn't need to type that information in. You can actually forward that information along to the merchant without typing in your shipping address, your email address, your phone number, any information that you would need in order to transact with that merchant. There will be rule sets associated with this. You obviously can't register someone else's username, but also, just meeting some basic requirements, exactly like you would expect to experience when signing up with a centralized service. In this case, the user found the username that they're happy with. There's a small fee. That helps prevent spam and people just registering millions of addresses or millions of profiles. And then you actually get the ability to update that information with a picture and username and contacts and other types of information that will be stored directly into the network. Once you pay for that, there is a short wait while that username is confirmed on the network, but it's not a very long wait, as you'll see right here. And you can actually opt out of that window and wait while it confirms. And you can actually see that progress in a progress bar. And this user is now up and running with a username on the network. It's that simple. And so you can see how we are targeting this mainstream user. Once you've created a username, now you can transact with other users. You can actually do a search of usernames and connect safely with that user. One of the other benefits is safety. I don't have to send addresses outside of the network any longer in order to transact with someone. So, those types of communications are subject to man-in-the-middle attacks. If I email someone my payment address and someone interferes with that, they can actually change the address to their own. This ensures that all of that communication takes place through the network, providing a much safer experience for our users. So let's talk about regulatory compliance and shift our attention there. So Dash is targeting this mainstream user. And, obviously we want to remain accessible in the marketplace. And Dash has done a lot of things to proactively engage with regulators in this uncertain space. We never conducted an ICO. We launched in a manner similar to Bitcoin and Litecoin, in which anyone was free to mine the coin, so there was no regulatory issue associated with the launch of Dash. All of the Dash that has ever come into an existence has done through the process of mining, similar to Bitcoin and Litecoin. We do proactively, Dash Core Group and other groups within the Dash ecosystem have engaged with regulators to ensure that we have two-way communication. In 2018, Dash Core Group met with the SEC to provide evidence that Dash isn't a security. Ultimately, in 2019, a group of cryptocurrency exchanges formed the Crypto Rating Council in order to provide a professional opinion to the industry. And the Crypto Rating Council agreed with us. They issued an opinion that Dash's security status is a 1 on their 1 to 5 scale, and that is the council's best rating possible. It means Dash has few or no characteristics consistent with treatment as a security. It's the best possible score, as I said. It puts us on the same rating as Bitcoin and actually a better rating than Ethereum. And those are obviously not securities at this point. And so in June 2020, we also proactively engaged with FinCEN, provided a presentation very similar to the one that you're seeing now, and answered their questions. And at the conclusion of that, they were very thankful for the opportunity. They didn't express any concerns associated with Dash following that meeting. And so we were surprised and concerned when FinCEN issued a proposed rulemaking in December of 2020 that miscategorized Dash as an anonymity-enhanced cryptocurrency. We provided feedback to FinCEN, and the link to that is provided here. I'm sure it'll be in the comments below this video as well. And really reiterated the arguments that Dash, there's no legal basis for Dash to be considered an anonymity-enhanced cryptocurrency, as you'll see as we get into these regulatory issues. Dash's privacy risk profile is substantially lower than Bitcoin's. And I think that this is a common misunderstanding in the industry. And let's look through the reasons why. So first, prior to Dash's existence, CoinJoin was implemented into Blockchain.com's hosted wallet service back in November of 2013. And that implementation required users to deposit funds to a trusted service. And CoinJoin is simply a technique. We'll talk a little bit more about what that technique is. It can be applied to any transparent blockchain. But basically, this functionality already existed before Dash did within Bitcoin. Now, Dash's founder announced that when he launched the coin, he was initially going to focus on enhancing the pseudonymity of Bitcoin shortly after that he launched it. And he actually rebranded the coin, which was then called Xcoin, to Darkcoin. Now, that branding decision certainly cast Dash in a negative light, especially among regulators, and it encouraged sensational press coverage that to this day continues to be reiterated. However, when you actually dig into the technology, Dash's private send feature is simply a branded implementation of CoinJoin. This is a method for complicating transactions in a way that enhances the user's privacy. But it requires absolutely no changes to Bitcoin's transaction protocol. And in fact, there are no differences at this point between Bitcoin's transaction protocol and Dash's transaction protocol. No changes were made to the rule set underpinning the transactions. Many Bitcoin wallets today support CoinJoin. And it's not just Bitcoin. It's Litecoin, it's Bitcoin Cash. These coins all have CoinJoin implementations that have been created on top of them. And so Dash's solution was certainly an improved one back in 2014. It provided a much safer experience because it was non-custodial. You didn't have to hand your coin off to a third party. And it was cost effective because our CoinJoin implementation scales and it doesn't require third-party fees in order to do it. And so those things are not sufficient to really draw a technical distinction between these technologies and the way that they function, nor the ability for third parties to observe the blockchain and analyze it. Since then, our focus has pivoted significantly. We're certainly proud of our CoinJoin implementation, but the legacy privacy anonymity reputation remained. And in early 2015, we really focused the network around speed and actually changed the name to reflect that to our current name, which is Dash, and really focused on the user experience, the overall payment experience, not simply the issue of privacy. And so what Dash actually is a portmanteau for digital and cash, bringing those two words together. And it also evokes the element of speed. And so this is really what the project is all about. And to clarify, Dash does not support any other privacy-enhancing features, such as off-chain transactions, shielded addresses, or shielded amounts. One question we get is, great, it's got all these legitimate purposes, but what about illegitimate use? A study done by RAND Europe back in 2020, just last year, mid-last year, did an analysis of wallet addresses identified on the darknet. And there is little evidence that Dash is used on the dark web in any meaningful way. And in fact, it's used about a third as often as Dogecoin. And so what they found is that Bitcoin comprised the vast majority of transactions at 91%. And the reaction we oftentimes get is, well, of course, Bitcoin is the largest by market cap. Dash is just smaller. But even adjusting for the market cap, all else being equal, usage of Dash on the dark web, this data would indicate, is about 70% lower than Bitcoin. And so that argument just doesn't hold water. Dash is not used for illicit purposes in any meaningful way. And so the worry that Dash is somehow being used for all these illicit purposes is just not supported by the data. So let's look at the privacy feature set. When you compare Dash to its cousins, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, and Bitcoin, these are the most similar currencies to Dash. All of them were forked from Bitcoin, or of course, Bitcoin itself. And they share these characteristics of transparent blockchains. So the blockchain itself, in all cases, are fully transparent. They have transparent input addresses, input amounts, output addresses, output amounts. And so these are fully transparent blockchains. All of them have a CoinJoin desktop and mobile wallet implementation available to their users. Again, these are just techniques that are applied to the transactions themselves to make them a little more difficult to analyze, but all of those characteristics remain. And in fact, there's no way anyone can prevent CoinJoin transactions from occurring on any transparent blockchain if they build a wallet that does it. And so, this alone is not sufficient to call Dash a privacy coin. And in fact, when you look at more advanced forms of CoinJoin, like Chaumian CoinJoin, this shields even the transaction details to the coordinating server, so that the coordinating server that brings multiple users together in a common transaction gathers no information about those users in the case of Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Bitcoin Cash. Dash has not integrated that functionality. Off-chain transactions, those have been implemented in Bitcoin and Litecoin with the Lightning Network. In those cases, you can't follow the transactions any longer through blockchain analytics. Dash does not have that functionality. Third-party tumbling services that accept Dash, complicate the transactions on your behalf, and then send some of it back to you. There are no third-party tumbling services operating with Dash. Mimblewimble. This is a privacy-enhancing technology, kind of like a side chain that Litecoin is implementing in the near future. They are supposed to launch that this year. Then we get into shielded addresses and shielded amounts. None of these coins support those, but other more advanced privacy technologies like Monero and Zcash do on a opt-in or non-optional basis. And then you get into third-party analytics providers. Dash is supported by Chainalysis exactly the same way that it is with Bitcoin, Litecoin, or Bitcoin Cash. And it's also fully travel rule compliant. I think there's still some rulemaking at the local level of how the travel rule will be implemented in various jurisdictions. But there's absolutely no argument about this. If Bitcoin can be compliant, so can Dash, because it is the exact same technology without the risks of darknet market usage and without the risks of off-chain transactions. And so when you do a side-by-side comparison, it is very difficult, if not impossible, to come up with any reasons why Dash should be considered a privacy coin while these other three should not be. Now let's dive into the privacy issue and how privacy works on these blockchains. Most blockchains are public open source software releases. There really aren't any inherent privacy coins in the sense that the blockchains themselves are not publicly readable. But there are a number of privacy techniques that can be applied to those public blockchains. Even Monero's blockchain is fully public. You can download it and you can view every single transaction, but there are techniques that make it more difficult to analyze those. Some, but not all of these techniques are listed here. And they range from off-chain transactions, shielding the addresses or amounts involved in a transaction, Mimblewimble, which is kind of a side chain that hides some details about a transaction, tumbling or mixer. These are services that take custody and therefore, may be violating money services laws. Oftentimes, those tumblers or mixers are operated by a third party that is anonymous on the dark web, for example. And then the last one is CoinJoin, which is a wallet feature and allows the users to complicate their own transactions and their own balances in a way that make it difficult for casual users to observe. And this is really, while individual aspects of different privacy technologies address different types of risks or different types of use cases, this is a rough ordering of the magnitude of privacy that each of these provide. With off-chain transactions through Lightning Network, even the nodes that are involved in those transactions can't see the origin or the destination of those funds. In the case of shielding addresses, all of this takes place on the blockchain itself, but there are zero-knowledge proofs or other mechanisms where analyzing those transactions becomes exponentially more difficult. Mimblewimble blocks kind of look like one large transaction rather than a list of individual transactions, and that obviously makes it much more difficult to analyze. Tumbling or mixers were, generally the familiarity with those is very, very familiar. This technique is custodial in nature, and so there's obviously issues with that and risks to the users. And lastly is CoinJoin or shuffling, and this is a similar type of process, but it's non-custodial, and it takes place in a very transparent way on the blockchain. And so on the scale of most anonymous to least anonymous, CoinJoin is a relatively modest improvement in the level of privacy that it can provide and the weaknesses that it does have. And so given that this is Dash's implementation, it again is really difficult to argue that this alone is enough to categorize Dash as an anonymity-enhanced cryptocurrency. And industry experts agree with us. Don't take our word for it. Chainalysis, which is undoubtedly the leading supplier to the U.S. government, Department of Justice, and others, FinCEN and others that are responsible for tracking illicit activities, they agree. And they stated when they added Dash as an option within their products that Dash's privacy features are no greater than Bitcoin's, making the label of privacy coin a misnomer for Dash. They also state that transactions are functionally identical to private send on other technologically similar cryptocurrencies, referring to Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and Litecoin. And they specifically mention that more advanced forms of CoinJoin are currently being used with more major currencies not labeled as privacy coins. Again, mentioning Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and Litecoin. They agree that there is no basis for which Dash should be labeled an anonymity-enhanced cryptocurrency, while these others are not. And lastly, a white paper from Perkins Coie came out last year, and they stated that, again, CoinJoin can be used in connection with Bitcoin transactions just as readily as Dash allows. Dash is technically no more of a privacy coin than Bitcoin, and they discuss that in greater detail. They also present some hypotheses about why this is the case. It just seems to be a reputational issue. And so I think that when people that really understand this technology are coming out with statements like this, it lends a great deal of credibility to what we're saying. Dash does comply with the Financial Action Task Force guidelines, including the travel rule, in the exact same manner that Bitcoin does. We have papers available on our website. If you go there, we have a regulatory section where you can access more details on all of this information. So a lot of people ask then, well, what exactly is a private send transaction? Can you walk me through how it works? Dash's private send functionality involves no transmission of user funds to any intermediary. All funds are in control of the user at all times until they actually go and spend them. Basically, what's happening is the user is moving Dash from one wallet address to another as they are preparing a balance that other people can't spy on easily, and other people can't associate as readily as when they spend it. And so there's absolutely no modification required to the Bitcoin protocol in order to do this. You can move funds from one address to another at any point in time. What makes these transactions a little bit different is that you're entering into a common transaction with other users. And also what makes CoinJoin's implementations today unique is that they are decentralized, they're non-custodial. Dash's is no different. Dash's is non-custodial, and it takes place between users. So it is an optional transaction type. You're not forced to use it. And in fact, on Dash's blockchain, it's only used about 0.38% of the time. That is data from 2020 across the entire year. 0.38% of all transactions were private sends. They're always user initiated, and it doesn't conceal any information. All data remains there on the ledger. They're also easily detected. You'll see why in a moment, because of their standardized nature. You can easily see that a particular transaction was a private send. And it's also, kind of what I would describe it is good enough for user safety purposes. If you are using private send, it provides a great deal of benefit to you. That doesn't mean that these transactions are not subject to any type of analytics. So here's an overview of the private send process and what non-custodial coin shuffling looks like. So there's basically 3 stages to a private send transaction. The first is to take an amount of Dash and to break it down into common components. In this case, this user is taking 5.32 Dash, and it's breaking it down into 5 1 Dash components, 3 0.1 Dash components, and 2.01 components. Once those standardized amounts are created, Dash is then sent from one wallet address in their wallet to another. And they do that in a common transaction with other users. At no point does the user lose control of the custody of their coins. Their wallet will only sign the transaction that is created if all of the users that are participating agree with the transaction. They'll only agree with the transaction and sign it if they're getting the same amount of Dash back as they put in. Otherwise, they wouldn't sign it. And so at no point does the user take any risk whatsoever with their funds, nor is any third party conducting this transaction like a coin mixer would. And in the third stage, the Dash is actually spent. At some point in the future, the user will choose to take those inputs and spend them. They are selected so that no change is required to the user, and any change that is due is simply paid to the network as a fee. And so in this way, it provides a much greater level of privacy to the user and to third parties. Notably, the recipient address in stage 3 is always normal. In other words, it's to one or more addresses that the user is actually making a payment. And so the privacy is only on the sender's behalf, not the recipient's. So private send again, is simply CoinJoin. This is an example of a CoinJoin. And what you'll note here is that the index numbers down the left-hand side of all of the inputs, there's 20 of them in all, counting index 0. And these amounts are simply transferred to 20 new addresses on the right. You can audit this. You can see each of the addresses involved. You can ensure that the amount being transacted on the inputs and outputs match. And everything about this transaction is completely public. Now, what's notable about this transaction is it's not a Dash private send. If you look carefully here, these are Bitcoin addresses and Bitcoin amounts. To prove that there are no differences between these protocols, we actually conducted private send transactions on Bitcoin's network. And it's not just this one transaction. We conducted a whole series of transactions. And you can see the link at the bottom there links to one of these. You can actually follow these transactions through and see that we did multiple of these transactions. You can see the denomination step in which the Bitcoin was broken down into its constituent units, like you see here. There is absolutely nothing about this transaction that violates any of Bitcoin's rule base or protocol. And so I'll actually flip to the real private send transaction here. And you can see not just the similarity, but these are exactly the same. The only difference is the address. Dash addresses start with an X. And that's really the only difference between these two transactions. So again, it begs the question, why would Dash need to be treated any differently from a regulatory standpoint if it is exactly the same as Bitcoin from a transaction protocol rule set? And so this is the crux of the argument, is that really there is no legal basis. There's no technical basis for this distinction. If you can do identical transactions on another chain, there's no reason why one should be treated differently than the other. I would also note that there are limitations to private send or CoinJoin in general. CoinJoin transactions are very easy to spot. You can tell that they are, as you saw on the previous slide, they're very easy to spot and identify. There's no question that those are CoinJoin transactions. As they're still public and transparent, the exact same techniques can be used to analyze CoinJoin transactions performed. Whether they're performed using Bitcoin, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, it does not matter. The same analytics techniques can be applied on the Dash network. There's another weakness here of CoinJoin, which is combinatorics. Combinatorics is a technique that can uniquely identify single originating private send addresses. For example, a user that's sending 73.4 Dash results in 14 inputs. There's 7 units of 10, 3 units of 1, and 4 units of 0.1. And using very advanced math and analytics, you can actually eliminate a lot of potential sources of those funds through the potential combinations that could have led to that transaction from potential originating addresses. And the more denominations you use, it actually weakens the level of privacy. And so the privacy level that you're able to achieve with an individual transaction varies significantly, and especially if you're using a large number of inputs. The behavior of other users can actually affect the level of privacy that your transactions as a user achieve. And part of the reason for that is it depends how they use the coins that they have participated in those transactions with in the future. For example, if a user transacts using some of these denominated outputs along with outputs that have not gone through that process, it's easy to tie those back to the originating wallet. And that eliminates a large number of potential combinations that combinatorics actually can reveal. And so you are dependent on other users on the network using the technology properly to a certain extent. And so that in and of itself kind of limits the potential of the benefits that you can assume will be there as a user. It is certainly better than not using CoinJoin, and we believe that it provides a great deal of privacy, but it certainly is not perfect. And at the end of the day, probability scores can be applied to individual transactions. Proximity scores to illicit behavior can be assigned to these transactions. And certainly over a period of time, a pattern of behavior or a pattern of higher than normal risk levels, even when this technology is used properly, can reveal information about the users. And so that is why blockchain analytics has been an effective tool for exchanges on Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and Litecoin, and can equally apply to Dash. So to summarize everything that we've shared here, there is persistent labeling in the press of Dash as a private C coin. And what we found in our conversations with regulators, it is that press-based labeling that they are depending on for their list of so-called privacy coins. But from a technical standpoint, there really is no basis for such a label. What we're not saying is that CoinJoin can't improve a user's privacy level. What we are saying is that that functionality makes Dash no different than other coins that are being treated differently from a regulatory standpoint. And there is no basis for that, in fact. Cryptocurrency exchanges can readily comply with regulator guidance in the exact same manner that they do with Bitcoin, using the same services or tools that they use today. With Dash, we have Chainalysis, we have Blockchain Intel, we have CoinFirm. These are KYC AML services that can be acquired by the exchanges and applied to the network in the exact same manner that they're using these other the same tools for these other currencies. Dash actually has a lower risk than Bitcoin because there's no evidence that Dash is used for illicit purposes in any meaningful way. There's no advanced privacy features that have been integrated into our CoinJoin implementation. And Dash is targeting mainstream users and use cases, meaning the vast majority of the activity is oriented towards those uses. And Dash Core Group has been very successful in avoiding or reversing delistings from exchanges in many cases. I'll just list a few examples here. There are others. In the EU, eToro X briefly delisted us in 2018 and relisted us a few months later after analyzing the situation. In Australia, Kraken relisted Dash. South Korea, BitHum. There are other examples like CEX that delisted Dash for a period of time and relisted us after looking at the issue more deeply. And so it's very clear that when exchanges take the time to really understand Dash and understand the technology, how it works, how they can be compliant, there are really no issues at all with listing us. There are other examples of exchanges that reached out to us proactively and said, hey, you know, how should we be viewing this private cent issue? How can we continue listing you? We're considering a delisting. And we've been able to avoid many of those in the first place. All it takes is some proactive communication around these issues. Dash Core Group is available for questions. We're happy to provide more information to regulators, more information to compliance officers, money services businesses, anyone that has a need to understand these compliance issues better and get more information from us. We can provide resources from third parties that can help address KYC AML issues. There is absolutely no reason why Dash needs to be delisted from any exchange anywhere in the world. you can reach out to, if you're a compliance officer or a money services business or a regulator, you can reach out to the team either at support@dash.org, or our Chief Financial Officer, Glenn, is happy to take your call. His address is glenn@dash.org. That's GLENN @dash.org. And all of us at Dash are really here to support and ensure that your exchange can continue to list Dash, or regulators help clarify any of the questions that you have when it comes to rulemaking and other regulatory related decision making. So with that, I'll close. Hopefully you found the presentation informative and comprehensive. That was certainly our aim, and looking forward to working with any of you in the future to address these issues. Thank you very much for your time.